Captain Hyun-woo Park stood on the bridge of the UES Harmony, watching the stars through the massive viewing window. His ship was beautiful, sleek white hull, peaceful design, and diplomatic flags that meant, "We come in friendship," in 47 different alien languages. For 30 years, ships like his had carried that same message across the galaxy. 30 years of bowing, 30 years of saying sorry, 30 years of being the galaxy's favorite punching bag. The communication screen flickered to life. Admiral Chen's face appeared, looking tired as always. "Hyun-woo, we need the Harmony at Centauri Station. Another trade dispute?" Hyun-woo sighed. "Let me guess. Someone took our stuff again and we need to politely ask for it back." The Vorthak Empire seized 3 colonies this time. They say there were mistakes in the treaties. Admiral Chen rubbed his temples. Ambassador So-Min Lee is already there, but she needs backup. 3 colonies. That meant thousands of human families, suddenly under alien rule. Hyun-woo had seen this movie before. The aliens would make demands. The humans would negotiate. Everyone would call it a peaceful solution. And somehow, humans would end up with less than they started with. "On our way," Hyun-woo said. The bridge crew moved with quiet efficiency. These were good people. Diplomats, translators, cultural experts. They had spent years learning alien customs, alien languages, alien ways of thinking. They could negotiate peace between species that had been fighting for centuries. But they could never quite manage to negotiate a fair deal for their own kind. Lieutenant Jin-Ho Kim looked up from his station. "Captain, the weapon systems are asking for their monthly diagnostic." Hyun-woo almost laughed. Weapon systems. The Harmony had some guns, technically. Every ship did. But they were small, designed more for asteroid mining than actual fighting. The galaxy saw human weapons and thought, "How cute. Run the diagnostic, Jin-Ho. Wouldn't want our mining lasers to malfunction." The trip to Centauri Station took 3 days. During the journey, Hyun-woo read the reports about the seized colonies. The Vorthak claimed the humans had been mining in restricted areas. The evidence suggested the opposite. The Vorthak had simply moved the boundaries after the mining started. It was a classic move. Change the rules after the game begins. Centauri Station was a massive structure, built by a dozen different species over several centuries. It looked like someone had taken 50 different architectural styles and smashed them together. The human section was the smallest, tucked away near the waste processing units. Even in a station that humans helped build, they got the worst neighborhoods. Ambassador So-Min Lee was waiting in the docking bay. She was young for a diplomat, maybe 35, with the kind of calm expression that came from years of practice. She had learned to smile while being insulted. She had learned to nod while being ignored. She was very good at her job. "Captain Park," she said, shaking his hand. "Thank you for coming." "What's the situation?" "The same as always. They took our stuff, they have reasons, and everyone expects us to understand." Her smile never wavered, but Hyun-woo caught something in her eyes. Fatigue, maybe, or frustration. The meeting was held in the council chamber, a huge room with seats arranged in circles. Each species had their own section, designed to accommodate their particular biology. The humans sat in simple chairs in a corner, almost like an afterthought. The Vorthak delegation arrived with great ceremony. They were reptilian, about 7 feet tall, with scales that shifted color based on their mood. Right now, they were showing contempt, a dull brown with flecks of red. Admiral Kessatar led the group, his scales so dark they were almost black. "Humans," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber through universal translators. "You have come to discuss your mistake." So Min stood up, still smiling. "Admiral Kessatar, thank you for meeting with us. We hope to resolve this misunderstanding quickly." Other delegates filled the remaining seats. The spider-like Zephyrians clicked their mandibles in what might have been amusement. The crystalline hegemony representatives chimed softly to each other. Everyone was watching the show. Admiral Kessatar activated a holographic display. It showed the 3 human colonies, New Sol, Terra Garden, and Hope Station. Each had thousands of residents, farms, factories, schools, places where humans had built lives. These territories were established in violation of Vorthak territorial claims, Kestar announced. The humans ignored proper procedures. So Min pulled up her own display. It showed the original survey data, the territorial agreements, the approved settlement permits. Everything was legal. Everything was proper. She had done her homework. "Admiral, as you can see, all proper procedures were followed. The territories were unoccupied, unclaimed, and legally—" "The humans lie," Kessatar interrupted, "as they always do." The chamber fell silent. In 30 years of diplomacy, no one had ever called humans liars to their faces in an official meeting. It was the kind of insult that could start wars between other species. So Min's smile flickered for just a moment. Then it returned, bright as ever. "Admiral, I think there may be some confusion in the translation." "No confusion." Kessatar's scales shifted to bright red. "Humans are weak. Humans are dishonest. Humans are—" He paused, searching for the right word. "Inferior." Captain Hyunwoo felt his hands tighten into fists. Around the chamber, representatives from other species watched with interest. Some looked uncomfortable, but none spoke up. This was just another human problem. So Min continued smiling. "Admiral, perhaps we could discuss compensation for any inconvenience. The humans will leave the territories. They will pay damages for their illegal occupation. They will publicly apologize for their deception." Kessatar's voice grew louder. "And they will be grateful we do not demand more." The chamber murmured approval. This was how things worked. Humans caused problems, humans fixed problems, humans said thank you for the privilege. So Min nodded. "We will need to consult with our government." The holographic display changed. Now it showed footage from New Sol. Vorthak soldiers were marching human civilians into the town square. Men, women, children, all lined up in neat rows. "Consultation is unnecessary," Kessatar said. "We have already begun proper administration of the territories." The footage continued. A Vorthak officer was speaking to the crowd, explaining new rules. No gatherings without permission. No human symbols or flags. All communication monitored. The colonists stood silent, afraid. Then the officer pointed to a small group of humans standing apart from the others. They were the colony leaders. The mayor, the sheriff, the head of the mining operation. People who had volunteered to build something new in the darkness between stars. These individuals organized illegal resistance to proper authority, Kessatar announced to the chamber. They must face consequences. The Vorthak soldiers raised their weapons. So Min's smile finally died. The execution was quick, professional, broadcast live across the galaxy as a lesson in proper order. 6 human beings who had committed no crime except believing in their right to exist, fell to the ground and did not get up. The chamber watched in silence. Some delegates looked away, others took notes. The Zephyrians made soft clicking sounds that might have been approval. "This concludes our demonstration of proper administrative procedure," Cassitar announced. "The humans may now begin their apology." Ambassador So-Min Lee stood up slowly. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "No." The word hung in the air like a gunshot. "Excuse me?" Cassitar's scales shifted to confused yellow. So-Min looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every delegate present. When she spoke again, her voice carried to every corner of the room. "I said no. No apologies, no compensation, no surrender." She turned back to Cassitar. "You have 48 hours to return our colonies and execute everyone responsible for those murders. If you don't, you will learn why humans stopped fighting each other." The chamber erupted in shocked voices, clicking mandibles and chiming crystals. No human had ever issued an ultimatum before. It simply wasn't done. Cassitar laughed, a harsh sound like breaking glass. "And if we refuse?" So-Min smiled again, but this time it was different. This time it looked dangerous. "Then you'll find out what humans are like when we stop being polite." The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On every space station, every colony, every homeworld, the same message was playing on repeat. A human had given an ultimatum to the Vorthak Empire. Ambassador So-Min Lee's words echoed through diplomatic channels, news networks, and private communications. 48 hours. Most aliens had never heard a human speak with such certainty before. Many thought it was some new negotiation tactic. On Earth, President Na-Yeon Choi sat in the emergency session of the Global Defense Council. The room was silent as they watched the recording from Centauri Station for the third time. When So-Min delivered her ultimatum, half the council looked terrified. The other half looked hungry. "She wasn't supposed to do that," whispered Defense Minister Tae-ho Jung. "She did exactly what she was supposed to do," Na-Yeon replied quietly. "The question is, are we ready to back her up?" General Kyung-Min Park, head of the Combined Space Forces, activated a holographic display. It showed the human fleet positions across the galaxy. 73 ships, all flying diplomatic flags, all supposedly carrying nothing but peaceful missions. "If we do this, there's no going back," the general said. "Once we drop the act, everyone will know what we really are." "What we really are is tired of being stepped on." Na-Yeon stood up. "Send the activation codes. All of them. Across human space." Encrypted messages began reaching ship captains, station commanders, and colonial governors. The messages were short, simple, and had been prepared 30 years ago. "Condition red. Unmask. Show them what we brought to the party." Captain Hyun-woo received his message while the Harmony was still docked at Centauri Station. He read it twice, then called his senior officers to his ready room. Lieutenant Jin-Ho Kim arrived first, followed by Commander Yoo-Jin Song and Dr. Min-Soo Kwon. "Gentlemen, lady," Hyun-woo began, "we have new orders." He handed them each a data pad. As they read, their expressions changed. Jin-Ho's eyes widened. Yoo-Jin sat up straighter. Dr. Kwon just smiled. "Sir," Jin-Ho said carefully, "these orders are asking me to activate weapon systems that I didn't know we had." "We all have things we didn't know about," Hyun-woo replied. "The question is, are you ready to stop pretending to be something you're not?" Jin-Ho looked at his data pad again. The specifications were incredible. The Harmony wasn't just a diplomatic vessel with mining lasers. It was a warship pretending to be a diplomatic vessel. The difference was enormous. "How long have we been carrying this kind of firepower?" Yujin asked. "Since launch," Dr. Kwan answered. "Every human ship has. Every human station, every human colony. We've been ready for this day since the beginning." On the Vorthak homeworld of Kethmoran, Admiral Kessitar was enjoying the reaction to his demonstration. Communications from across the galaxy praised his firm handling of the human problem. The crystalline hegemony sent congratulations. The Zephyrian Banking Consortium offered favorable loan terms for future expansion. "The humans will apologize within hours," he told his staff. "They always do." His intelligence chief, a smaller Vorthak named Resakan, looked nervous. "Admiral, our agents report unusual activity in human space. Ship movements, communication spikes, something about activation codes." Kessitar waved dismissively. "Humans preparing another apology. They probably need to ask permission from their committees and councils. Weak species always have complicated bureaucracy." 24 hours passed. The Vorthak waited for the human response. Other species placed bets on how elaborate the human apology would be. The Zephyrians were offering 3-to-1 odds on public begging. On Centauri Station, Ambassador So-Min Lee had not left the human diplomatic section. She spent her time reading reports, making calls, and waiting. Captain Hyun-woo found her in the observation lounge, staring out at the stars. "Any word from home?" she asked. "The President sends her compliments," Hyun-woo replied. "And the activation codes," So-min nodded. "How do you think the galaxy will react when they find out?" "Probably with surprise," Hyun-woo said. "Hard to blame them. We've been very convincing." "My grandfather fought in the water wars on Earth," So-min said quietly. "Before first contact, before the peaceful years. He used to tell me stories about what humans were like when we had to fight for everything. I always wondered what happened to that spirit." "It didn't go anywhere," Hyun-woo replied. "We just hid it very well." The 48-hour deadline approached. Across the galaxy, aliens waited for the humans to back down. It was the natural order of things. Humans were peaceful, reasonable, and weak. They would find some face-saving compromise and everyone would move on. Admiral Kessitar called a press conference. Representatives from major news networks gathered to hear his statement. He planned to announce the human surrender and use it as a launching point for further expansion into human territory. "Fellow beings of the galaxy," he began, "the human ultimatum was, as expected, merely a negotiation tactic. They have seen the wisdom of accepting proper authority and will soon—" His aide rushed onto the platform, scales flickering with alarm. He whispered urgently in Kessitar's ear. The Admiral's own scales shifted from confident gold to confused yellow. "What do you mean, all of them?" Kessitar hissed. The aide handed him a data pad. On it was a simple message, broadcast simultaneously. From every human ship, station, and colony in the galaxy. The 48-hour deadline has expired. The age of human politeness is over. We gave peace a chance. Now we give war a chance. Signed, the Terran Defense Authority. "Who is the Terran Defense Authority?" Kessitar demanded. His intelligence chief appeared, scales pale with fear. "Sir, we don't know. It's not in any of our files. There's no record of any such organization." The first sign of change came from the human ships. Across the galaxy, vessels that had flown diplomatic flags for decades began raising new banners. The flags were black, with a silver star pattern, the same stars that appeared on ancient human maps of their home constellation. On the UES Harmony, Lieutenant Jin-Ho Kim was discovering what his ship could really do. Hidden weapon ports were opening along the hull. Systems he thought were for asteroid mining were revealing their true purpose. The Harmony was transforming from a diplomatic vessel into something else entirely. "Captain," Jin-Ho reported, "all weapon systems are online. I'm reading power levels I didn't know we could generate." "Time to find out what we can do with them," Hyun-woo replied. "Set course for the Vorthak military station at Kepler 442b. Maximum speed." Dr. Kwon was at his science station, pulling up files that had been classified for 30 years. "Captain, I have the complete biological and psychological profiles for every major species in the galaxy. Weaknesses, fear responses, cultural pressure points, everything." "How long have you been collecting this data?" Yujin asked. "Since first contact," Dr. Kwon replied. "Every diplomatic mission, every cultural exchange, every peaceful negotiation, we were always taking notes." The galaxy began to understand that something fundamental had changed when human ships started moving. Not just a few ships, but all of them. Every human vessel in space was suddenly heading somewhere with purpose and speed that no one had seen before. On Earth, President Na-yeon Choi addressed the planet in a speech that was broadcast across human space. "For 30 years, we have been the galaxy's mediators, the peacemakers, the species that everyone could count on to be reasonable. We bent over backward to avoid conflict. We apologized for existing. We accepted insults with smiles." The camera moved closer to her face. "That experiment is over. Today, the galaxy learns what humans are like when we stop pretending to be something we're not." Admiral Kessitar finally understood that something was very wrong when his own intelligence networks started going dark. Human cultural attachés who had been stationed on Vorthak worlds for years were suddenly unreachable. Communication satellites were malfunctioning. Traffic control systems were showing errors. "Sir," his aide reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel Harmony. They're requesting permission to dock." "Requesting?" Kessitar's scales shifted to angry red. "Since when do humans request anything? Grant it. I want to see what pathetic excuse they've prepared. The transmission came through on all frequencies, broadcast to the entire Vorthak system." Captain Hyun-woo's face appeared on screens across the space station, looking calm and professional. "Admiral Kessitar," he said politely, "this is Captain Park of the Terran Defense Authority. We are not requesting permission to dock. We are informing you that we will be there in 30 minutes. Please have your surrender prepared by then. We have schedules to keep." The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Admiral Kessitar finally realized that the humans had never been weak. They had been waiting, and now they were done waiting. The Vorthak military station, orbiting Kepler 442b, was a monument to imperial power. Built over 3 centuries, it housed 50,000 personnel and controlled shipping lanes for dozens of star systems. Its shields could stop asteroids. Its weapons could crack planets. It had never been successfully attacked. Admiral Dong-hyun Park, commanding the Terra Defense Fleet, studied the station through his flagship's view screen. He was Captain Hyun-woo's older brother, though the family resemblance ended with their calm demeanor. Where Hyun-woo had spent 30 years learning diplomacy, Dong-hyun had spent 30 years learning war. "Admiral," reported Lieutenant Commander Yoo-jin Song, "the station is powering up defensive systems. They're trying to jam our communications." "Let them try," Dong-hyun replied. "Commander Bo-ra-yoon, deploy the fleet. Let's show them what we brought to this party. The human fleet spread out around the massive station. 27 ships that had pretended to be civilian transports, research vessels, and cargo haulers. As they took position, their hulls began to split open like flowers blooming in reverse. Hidden weapons bays revealed themselves. Sensor arrays that looked like communication dishes showed their true purpose. Mining platforms became missile launchers. On the Vorthak station, Admiral Kessatar watched the transformation with growing horror. "What are we looking at?" he demanded. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the human vessels are changing. Their power signatures are increasing by factors of 10, 50. Some are off the charts." "Impossible," Kessatar snarled. "Humans don't have military technology. Their ships are civilian-grade at best." The tactical display updated. What had appeared to be 27 lightly armed ships was now revealed as a battle fleet carrying more firepower than the entire Vorthak Home Defense Force. Admiral Dong Hyun opened a communication channel. "Admiral Kessatar, this is Admiral Park of the Terran Defense Authority. You have 10 minutes to surrender your station and submit to arrest for war crimes. This is your only warning." Kessatar's scales blazed with fury. "Human, you dare threaten the Vorthak Empire? We have ruled space for 1,000 years. And we've been planning for this conversation for 30, Dong Hyun replied calmly. 9 minutes, 30 seconds, open fire! Kessatar screamed. The station's weapon systems came alive. Massive energy beams lanced out toward the human fleet. Missile volleys followed, each warhead powerful enough to vaporize a small ship. For a moment, space blazed with destructive light. When the light faded, all 27 human ships remained intact. Shields holding at 98%, Yujin reported. Their weapons are exactly as powerful as Dr. Kwan predicted. Dr. Minsu Kwan had spent 30 years studying alien technology while pretending to be a cultural expert. Every diplomatic mission had been a chance to scan, analyze, and understand how alien weapons worked. Now that knowledge was paying off. "Admiral," the doctor said, "their main plasma cannon will need 40 seconds to recharge. Their missile batteries are designed to penetrate conventional shields using frequency rotation. Unfortunately for them, our shields don't use conventional technology." Dong Hyun nodded. "Return fire. Precision strikes only. I want the station disabled, not destroyed." The human fleet opened fire. But instead of the crude energy weapons the galaxy expected from humans, they unleashed something entirely different. Coherent gravitational pulses that bypassed shields entirely. Quantum disruption beams that turned solid matter into probability clouds. Weapons that no known species had ever developed. The Vorthak station's shields collapsed in seconds. Its weapon systems simply stopped existing. In less than a minute, a fortress that had taken centuries to build was reduced to a helpless metal shell. "Station neutralized," Yujin reported. "No casualties among their personnel, as ordered." Dong Hyun opened the communication channel again. "Admiral Kessatar, your weapons are offline. Your shields are gone. Your engines are disabled. You have 2 choices: surrender, or we demonstrate what happens when humans stop being merciful." Lieutenant Commander Yujin Song led the boarding party that secured the station. She had spent years as a cultural liaison on Vorthak worlds, learning their customs and language. The Vorthak had always seen her as a harmless academic. They never noticed that she was also studying their military procedures, their security systems, and their psychological weaknesses. The station's defenders surrendered without firing a shot. It wasn't fear of human weapons that broke their will. It was the realization that the humans knew everything about them. Every security code, every defensive protocol, every backup system. 30 years of peaceful cooperation had given humans access to every secret the Vorthak thought they had. Admiral Kessatar was found in his command center, staring at displays showing the complete collapse of his defenses. When Yu Jin entered, with her security team, he looked up with scales that had faded to the gray of defeat. "How?" he asked simply. "We listened," Yu Jin replied. "Every conversation, every meeting, every casual comment. You taught us everything we needed to know about how to defeat you." Across Vorthak space, similar scenes were playing out. Su Young Han, who had spent 15 years as a cultural attaché on the Vorthak homeworld, was simultaneously sabotaging infrastructure across 3 planets. What the aliens had thought were cultural exchange programs had been the most effective intelligence operation in galactic history. Power grids failed, communication networks went dark, military installations found their own computers working against them. The humans hadn't just been learning about alien culture, they had been preparing to take it apart. On Earth, the global news networks were showing footage from across human space. Every human colony, every human station, every human outpost was revealing weapons and defenses that had been hidden for decades. The galaxy was discovering that humans had never been as helpless as they appeared. President Nayan Choi held another press conference. For 30 years, the galaxy has known humans as diplomats and peacekeepers. What they didn't know is that we have excellent memories. Every insult, every threat, every casual display of contempt, we remembered it all. We studied every species that thought they were better than us. We learned their weaknesses. We prepared for this day. The camera showed images of human military technology that had been hidden in plain sight. Our mining platforms are mobile fortresses. Our research stations are intelligence centers. Our cargo ships are troop transports. We didn't lie about what these things could do. We just didn't mention what else they could do. The Vorthak Empire was learning the difference between believing you are superior and actually being superior. Their forces were designed to fight other conventional militaries. The humans weren't conventional. They were something entirely different. General Subin Park was overseeing the systematic occupation of Vorthak military installations. What should have been a months-long campaign was taking days. Human forces moved with precision that seemed impossible until you realized they had been planning. Every move for decades. "General," reported Colonel Wu Jin Kang, "the Vorthak Third Fleet has surrendered without engagement. They're requesting safe passage to their homeworld." "Granted," Subin replied, "but they leave their weapons behind. We'll be needing those for adding—" "What, sir?" Subin smiled. "The next species that needs to learn some manners." Dr. Minsu Kwan was broadcasting a message to the galaxy's scientific community. It was appearing on every research station, every university, every laboratory. The message was simple but devastating. Human science has been deliberately understated for 30 years. Every paper we published, every technology we shared, every discovery we made public, that was about 10% of our actual capability. We kept the interesting stuff to ourselves. The implications were staggering. If human basic technology was decades ahead of what most species thought, what were humans capable of when they stopped holding back? The answer came from the human fleet still surrounding the Vorthak station. Admiral Dong Hyun was demonstrating new technology to the galaxy's observers. Ships that could fold space around themselves, weapons that could target specific molecules, defensive systems that turned incoming attacks into useful energy. This is what humans built while you thought we were learning to be peaceful. Dong-hyun broadcast to the galaxy. We were learning, all right. We were learning everything. On the Zephyrian banking world of Silk Moth, the spider-like financial masters were discovering that their economic models were completely wrong. Every projection, every analysis, every assessment of human economic capacity had been based on false data. The humans had hidden their true productivity, their real technological capacity, their actual resource base. They're not a minor species. Clicked High Financier Zektul. They're a major power that's been pretending to be minor for 30 years. The crystalline beings of the hegemony were reaching similar conclusions. Their perfect analytical minds, capable of processing vast amounts of data, were revealing a disturbing truth. The humans had fed them false information from the very beginning. Every cultural exchange, every scientific collaboration, every diplomatic meeting had been carefully designed to make humans appear less capable than they actually. The Galactic Council met in emergency session for the first time in 50 years. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the Great Assembly Hall on Nexus Prime, their voices creating a cacophony of clicks, hisses, chimes, and growls. The topic was simple: what to do about the humans. Councillor Veltar of the Crystalline Hegemony chimed his analysis to the Assembly. The human action against the Vorthak was disproportionate. They must be sanctioned before this aggression spreads. Hi. Banker Zektul's mandibles clicked in agreement. The Zephyrian Banking Consortium supports immediate economic sanctions. Human access to galactic markets must be suspended. The Andromedan representative, a tall being with flowing energy patterns, instead of solid flesh pulsed with authority. The Crown Prince supports military intervention if necessary. Order must be maintained. What none of them mentioned was the fear. Every species in the chamber had spent decades looking down on humans, treating them as useful servants. Now they were discovering that the servants had been taking notes. Economics Minister Tai Hyung Lim received the council's demands while sitting in his office on Luna Station. He read through the list of sanctions, trade restrictions, and ultimatums, then began to laugh. It started as a chuckle and grew into the kind of laughter that comes from hearing a particularly good joke. His assistant, Secretary Ji-Woo Park, looked concerned. Sir, these sanctions could seriously damage our economy. Could they? Tae-hyung pulled up his holographic displays, showing the real structure of galactic trade. Let me show you something interesting. The display revealed trade flows that the aliens had never bothered to track carefully. Humans didn't just participate in galactic commerce, they controlled it. 67% of interstellar shipping used human vessels. 43% of rare mineral extraction was handled by human operations. 91% of language translation services depended on human-operated systems. The aliens think they're sanctioning us, Tae-hyung said, still smiling. We're about to show them who's actually in charge of their economy. Captain Bo-ra-yoon commanded the human merchant fleet from her flagship, the UES Commerce. Like every other civilian human vessel, it had hidden capabilities that were about to become very relevant. When the activation codes came through, her ship's cargo bays opened to reveal something unexpected: the galaxy's largest mobile shipyard. All vessels, this is Captain Yoon, she broadcast to the 1,000-ship human merchant fleet. Execute Protocol 7. It's time to remind the galaxy who actually delivers their groceries. Across the galaxy, human ships simply stopped working for anyone else. Cargo vessels turned around mid-route. Passenger liners canceled their schedules. Mining platforms went dark. Communication networks that had operated smoothly for decades suddenly experienced technical difficulties. On the Zephyrian homeworld, high banker Zektul was discovering what economic warfare really looked like. The quantum computers that processed interstellar banking transactions were manufactured by human companies. The translation algorithms that allowed different species to conduct business were written by human programmers. The shipping networks that moved goods between worlds were operated by human crews. "Sir," clicked his aide, "the humans have shut down the entire galactic payment system." "They can't do that," Zektul replied. "We own the banks." "Yes, sir, but the humans built the computers that run the banks, and they just turned them off." The economic collapse was swift and brutal. Within 12 hours, cargo shipments across the galaxy had ground to a halt. Financial transactions became impossible. Even simple communication between worlds became difficult as human-operated translation services went offline. General Subin Park was watching the chaos from her command center on Ceres Station. The hidden military base had been disguised as an asteroid mining operation for 20 years. Now its true purpose was revealed, coordinating the most effective economic siege in galactic history. "General," reported Colonel In-Ho Kim, "the Andromedan Crown Prince is demanding immediate negotiations." "Tell him to get in line," Subin replied. "We're taking calls in order of how politely they ask." On the Andromedan homeworld of Luxandra, Crown Prince Mordeth was learning humility the hard way. His royal palace, a structure of living energy that required constant maintenance by quantum engineers, was slowly fading as the human technical staff simply walked away from their jobs. "This is intolerable!" the prince pulsed with fury. "We are the Andromedan Empire. We do not negotiate with servants." His advisor, a smaller energy being named Kileth, flickered with nervous patterns. "Your Highness, perhaps we should consider that the humans may not be servants after all." "Impossible! I have personally insulted human ambassadors for decades. They always accept it with that pathetic smile." "Yes, Your Highness. And apparently they were memorizing every word." Ambassador Wu Jin Kang had indeed been memorizing every insult, every slight, every casual display of contempt during his 20 years at the Andromedan court. He had smiled and nodded while the Crown Prince mocked human culture, human appearance, and human intelligence. He had endured lectures about knowing his place and showing proper respect. Now he stood in the same throne room where he had been humiliated so many times. But this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood a squad of human marines in full combat. Armor, weapons that could disrupt energy beings focused and ready. "Your Highness," Wu Jin said with the same polite smile he had worn for 2 decades. "I believe you wanted to discuss terms?" The Crown Prince's energy patterns flickered with uncertainty. "This is unusual. Humans do not typically travel with armed escorts to diplomatic meetings." "Humans do many things we don't typically do," Wu Jin replied. "For instance, we typically don't hold grudges, but we make exceptions for special cases." "What do you want?" Wu Jin pulled out a datapad and began reading. "Formal apology for 20 years of insults, reparations for damages to human dignity, recognition of human territorial claims, military access agreements, trade preference deals." He looked up from the pad. "Oh, and one more thing." "What?" Wu Jin's smile became genuinely warm. "I want you to apologize for every single insult you've ever delivered to a human representative. Personally, by name, while being broadcast across the galaxy." The prince's Energy form began to pulse with anger, then slowly faded to the dim glow of defeat. And if I refuse? Then you can explain to your people why their homeworld no longer has power, transportation, or communication systems. On Earth, President Nayan Choi was fielding communication requests from across the galaxy. Every major species wanted to negotiate. Every minor species wanted to know if they were safe. Every news network wanted interviews. The galaxy is learning an important lesson, she announced in her daily briefing. We spent 30 years being polite because we chose to be polite, not because we had to be. There's a difference between being peaceful and being weak. We were never weak. The displays behind her showed human capabilities that were being revealed for the first time. Manufacturing plants that could build starships in days instead of months. Research facilities that had developed technology decades ahead of anything the galaxy had seen. Military installations that made the Vorthak Empire's defenses look like toys. Every species in the galaxy had the same information about humanity, Nayan continued. They could have seen what we were capable of if they had bothered to look carefully. But they saw what they wanted to see, a species they could use and ignore. Dr. Min-Soo Kwon was broadcasting his own message to the galaxy's scientific community. The revelation of human technological capabilities was causing panic in research institutions across known space. Every major breakthrough in the last 30 years had been achieved with human assistance. Now they were discovering that the humans had been holding back. We shared our obsolete technology, Dr. Kwon explained to the camera. We kept the interesting developments to ourselves. While you were celebrating discoveries we had made 20 years earlier, we were working on things you haven't imagined yet. The demonstration that followed changed everything. Dr. Kwon showed the galaxy technology that turned matter into energy and back again. Ships that could travel between stars in hours instead of days. Weapons that could precisely target individual molecules across vast distances. Medical techniques that could rebuild living beings from genetic templates. This is what humans built while pretending to be impressed by your achievements, he said. We were being polite. The crystalline hegemony was the first to break. Their perfect analytical minds, capable of processing vast amounts of data, had reached an inescapable conclusion. Fighting humanity would result in their complete annihilation. Not defeat, annihilation. Counselor Veltar transmitted his surrender. Directly to Earth, the hegemony acknowledges human superiority and requests favorable terms for peaceful coexistence. The Zephyrian Banking Consortium followed 12 hours later, after their economic models showed that continued resistance would collapse their civilization within weeks. The Andromedan Empire held out for 36 hours before Crown Prince. Mordeth delivered his public apology, broadcast across the galaxy exactly as Ambassador Wu Jin had demanded. Prime Minister Hanil Choi stood on the observation deck of the UES Reckoning, humanity's new flagship. The massive vessel was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, not because of its weapons or shields, but because of what it represented. This was the seat of galactic government now, and everyone knew it. The Galactic Assembly had been reformed under human oversight. Gone were the circular arrangements where every species sat as equals. The new chamber had a clear hierarchy, with humanity at the center and other species arranged by their usefulness to the new order. Prime Minister, reported Admiral Sung Ho Jung, the partition of former Vorthak space is complete. 17. Star systems have been assigned to human colonization. The remaining territories have been distributed to species that supported our action. Hanul nodded, watching the stars through the viewport. And the Vorthak population? Relocated to suitable worlds within our protection zone. They're adapting to their new circumstances with surprising speed. The efficiency was remarkable, even by human standards. Within weeks of the Vorthak Empire's collapse, entire star systems had been processed, cataloged, and reorganized. The chaos that should have followed such a massive political change simply never materialized. Ambassador So-Min Lee, now Director of External Relations, was handling the steady stream of species requesting audience with human leadership. The old days of humans waiting for permission to speak were long over. The crystalline hegemony has offered to share their quantum computing research, So-Min reported. The Zephyrian Banking Consortium wants to discuss debt restructuring. The Andromedan Empire is asking about cultural exchange programs. Cultural exchange, Hanul repeated with amusement. Fascinating how everyone suddenly wants to understand human culture. On the former Vorthak world of Keth-Moran, Cultural Director Yejin Park was overseeing the most successful re-education program in galactic history. The Vorthak children who had been taught that humans were inferior servants were now learning human history, human values, and human languages alongside their traditional studies. The young ones adapt quickly, reported teacher Min Ho Jung. They're beginning to understand that strength without wisdom leads to defeat. The older Vorthak are having more difficulty adjusting to their new reality. That's expected, Yejin replied. The adults remember when they were the ones giving orders. The children only remember the time after humans stopped taking orders. The education centers weren't prison camps or indoctrination facilities. They were simply schools that taught accurate history instead of the propaganda that had dominated Vorthak education for centuries. Students learned about the rise and fall of empires, the consequences of arrogance, and the importance of treating other species with respect. Most importantly, they learned about human patience. Trade Coordinator Jaemin Kim was restructuring galactic commerce from his office on Luna Station. The new system was more efficient than anything the galaxy had ever seen, with trade routes optimized by human artificial intelligence and disputes resolved by human arbitration. Production is up 30% across all major systems, Jaemin reported to the Prime Minister. Transportation times have been reduced by half. Resource allocation efficiency has improved by orders of magnitude. Complaints? The Zephyrian Banking Consortium is concerned about their reduced profit margins. Several species are unhappy about the new transparency requirements. Otherwise, everyone seems to appreciate not having their cargo ships randomly seized by local authorities. The new galactic economy was built on a simple principle: mutual benefit under human supervision. Species that followed the rules prospered. Species that cheated or oppressed others found their access to galactic markets mysteriously restricted. Admiral Seung Ho Jung was overseeing the most ambitious construction project in galactic history, the integration of human defensive systems across all inhabited worlds. What looked like civilian infrastructure was actually the largest military network ever built. The hegemony worlds are online, reported engineer Sujin Park. The Andromedan systems will be completed next month. Even the outer rim colonies now have full defensive coverage. Any resistance? Some local officials complained about human personnel having access to their planetary systems. We explained that they could have human protection, or they could have independence, but not both. Most chose protection. The genius of the system was its invisibility. Species that cooperated with human oversight found their worlds better defended, their trade more profitable, and their internal conflicts mysteriously resolved before they could escalate. Species that resisted found themselves increasingly isolated and vulnerable. On Earth, President Na Yan Choi was receiving reports from across human space. The transformation of galactic civilization was proceeding ahead of schedule. Colony establishment is exceeding projections, reported Colonial Administrator Jinwoo Lee. The new settlements are already self-sufficient. Population growth in human space is at record levels. Military readiness? All systems operational. The hidden fleets remain undetected. Our intelligence networks are functioning perfectly. Defense Minister Tae Ho Jung looked pleased. No species has the capability to threaten human interests at this time. But not everyone in the galaxy was adapting to the new reality. The message came through diplomatic channels broadcast to every major world simultaneously. The sender was unknown, the technology used was beyond current galactic standards, and the content was absolutely clear. This is the Void Emperor Thekmoran. The aberrant species known as humans will cease their expansion immediately. You will return to your designated territories. You will resume your proper role as servants and mediators. Failure to comply will result in correction. The galaxy held its breath. The Void Emperors were a legend, the first species humanity had, encountered when they left their solar system. Ancient beyond measure, technologically advanced beyond comprehension, they had withdrawn to the galaxy's edge centuries ago. Most species had forgotten they existed. Prime Minister Hanul read the message calmly, then turned to her military advisors. Admiral Young, what do we know about the Void Emperors? Significant technological capabilities, though possibly dated. Estimated population in the billions. Military strength unknown, but probably considerable. Admiral Jung looked thoughtful. They made first contact with us 60 years ago before the diplomatic period began. And what was their attitude toward humanity then? Condescending? They welcomed us to the galaxy like adults welcoming children to a playground. They expected us to know our place and stay there. Hanul smiled the same smile that Ambassador So-Min Lee had used in the Galactic Council chambers so many months ago. It was the smile of someone who had been underestimated for far too long. Send them a response. Tell them we appreciate their concern, but we're busy right now. Perhaps they could make an appointment. The response triggered the largest military mobilization the galaxy had ever witnessed. From the distant edge of space, fleets began moving toward human territory. Ships that looked like they had been built by gods rather than mortals, powered by technologies that most species couldn't even understand. But in the hidden shipyards scattered throughout human space, Dr. Min-Soo Kwon was preparing humanity's answer. The Void Emperors were about to learn the same lesson that had been taught to every other species in the galaxy. Admiral Park, Dr. Kwon transmitted to Fleet Command, I'm uploading the complete analysis of Void Emperor technology. They're using quantum resonance drives, which means their ships will be vulnerable to harmonic disruption fields. What about their weapons? Impressive, but predictable. They rely on overwhelming technological superiority rather than tactical innovation. They fight like a species that has never lost a battle. And humans fight like? Dr. Kwon smiled. Humans fight like a species that has lost many battles and learned from everyone. The Void Emperor fleet approached human space with the confidence of absolute superiority. They had ruled the galaxy when most current species were still discovering fire. They had technologies that could reshape matter at the molecular level. They had never been successfully challenged. They were about to discover what happened when an unstoppable force met an immovable object that had been preparing for the collision for 30 years. Grand Admiral Jun-Ho Park received his orders while commanding the hidden human fleet at the galaxy's edge. The ships under his command had never been seen by alien sensors. They had been built in parallel dimensions, powered by technologies that the Void Emperors had never encountered. All ships, Admiral Junho broadcast to his fleet. "The Void Emperors are about to learn why humans stopped fighting each other. We didn't run out of enemies. We just ran out of enemies worth fighting." The first engagement would be at the Battle of the Seven Suns, where the Void Emperor advance fleet would meet humanity's border defense force. The galaxy watched through long-range sensors as two civilizations prepared for a conflict that would determine the future of known space. But in her command center on the Reckoning, Prime Minister Hanul was already planning for victory. The Void Emperors represented the old galaxy, where ancient powers ruled through fear and technological. Grand Admiral Junho Park stood in the command center of the UES Defiance, watching the Void Emperor fleet approach through the sensor displays. After 30 years of fighting inferior opponents, humanity was finally facing an enemy that might actually be dangerous. The Void Emperor vessels were unlike anything in the galaxy. They looked less like ships and more like geometric impossibilities, structures that seemed to exist in more dimensions than normal space allowed. Their hulls shimmered with colors that had no names, and they moved without any visible propulsion system. "Admiral," reported his tactical officer, Commander Dawan Kim, "the enemy fleet consists of 200 vessels. Power readings are off the charts. Their technology is at least 50 years ahead of anything we've encountered." "Only 50 years?" Junho replied calmly. "That's disappointing. I was hoping for a real challenge." The Battle of the Seven Suns began when the Void Emperor flagship, a massive structure called the Eternal Dominion, sent a communication across all frequencies. "Primitive humans," the voice was ancient, carrying the weight of millennia. "You face the might of beings who ruled space when your species was still learning to make fire. Surrender now, and your correction will be merciful." Admiral Junho opened a return channel. "Emperor Thekmoran, this is Admiral Park of the Terran Defense. Authority, we appreciate the history lesson, but we're going to have to decline your generous offer. You see, we're not very good at surrendering. Your arrogance will be corrected." "Probably not," Junho replied, "but you're welcome to try." The Void Emperor attack was devastating in its precision. Weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics glanced through space, targeting human ships with technologies that shouldn't have been possible. Reality itself seemed to bend around their weapons, turning solid matter into probability clouds and energy into thought. For the first time since the war began, human shields failed. The UES Courage simply ceased to exist, its atoms scattered across several dimensions. The UES Honor had its entire crew displaced in time, leaving behind a ghost ship that flickered between past and future. The UES Determination was turned inside out, its hull becoming a twisted sculpture of impossible geometry. "Damage report," Junho ordered calmly, watching 3 of his ships disappear from the tactical display. 15 vessels damaged or destroyed," Dawan replied. "Their weapons are operating on principles we haven't seen before. Dr. Kwan's analysis was incomplete." "Good," Junho said. "I was worried this would be too easy." Special Forces Colonel Dongwon Song was leading the evacuation of survivors from the damaged ships. For the first time in the war, humans were retreating under fire. But as his rescue teams pulled wounded sailors from twisted wreckage, he was collecting something more valuable than personnel: data. "Colonel," reported his science officer, Lieutenant Yoonji Park, "the weapon residue is fascinating. They're using quantum entanglement cascades to destabilize molecular bonds. I've never seen anything like it." "Can we counter it?" "Maybe. The effect depends on precise harmonic frequencies. If we could disrupt the resonance patterns. She paused, studying her readings. Colonel, this is brilliant science, but it's also extremely brittle. One variable out of place and the whole system fails. Dr. Yun-Kyung Lim, humanity's top xenopsychologist, was analyzing the Void Emperor communications from her research station. What she discovered changed everything about the tactical situation. Admiral, she transmitted to the fleet, I've identified a critical weakness in Void Emperor psychology. They're not just ancient, they're institutionally ancient. They haven't adapted their thinking in thousands of years. Explain. Their entire civilization is based on the principle that age equals wisdom, that experience guarantees success. They've been using the same strategies for millennia because those strategies always worked. But that means they're completely unprepared for opponents who don't follow historical patterns. Grand Admiral Jun-Ho absorbed this information while watching the Void Emperor fleet reorganize for their next attack. They were moving in formations that were geometrically perfect, tactically sound, and utterly predictable to anyone who understood their underlying philosophy. All ships, Jun-Ho broadcast to his fleet. New tactical parameters. Ignore everything we know about proper fleet engagement. I want chaos protocols. Randomize everything. Movement, targeting, communication patterns. Make it impossible for them to predict what we'll do next. Sir? Dawan asked. Won't that make us less effective? Against a normal enemy, yes. Against an enemy who depends on predictability, chaos is our best weapon. The second engagement was completely different from the first. Instead of organized battle lines, human ships moved in apparently random patterns. Instead of coordinated attacks, each vessel operated independently. Instead of logical target selection, humans fired at whatever seemed interesting at the moment. The Void Emperor fleet, designed to counter organized military tactics, found itself completely unable to adapt to opponents who seemed to have no tactics at all. Emperor Thekmoran, commanding from the Eternal Dominion, watched his perfect formations struggle against human unpredictability with growing confusion. How are they targeting our command vessels when they appear to be firing randomly? He demanded of his tactical staff. Unknown, Eternal One. Their actions follow no logical pattern. They seem to be making decisions without any strategic planning. Impossible. All intelligent species follow basic tactical principles. What the Emperor didn't understand was that humans had studied every major battle in galactic history. They knew exactly what the Void Emperors expected them to do, and they were deliberately doing the opposite. Scientist Da-Yun Park was coordinating the real human strategy from her laboratory on Luna Station. While the fleet appeared to be acting randomly, every movement was actually part of a complex mathematical pattern designed to exploit Void Emperor weaknesses. The key is their dependence on quantum prediction algorithms, she explained to Admiral Jun-Ho. They calculate probable outcomes based on logical decision trees. But if our decisions aren't logical, their predictions become useless. So we win by being irrational. We win by being unpredictable. There's a difference. The tide of battle began to turn when Commander Yu Jin Song led a boarding party onto a damaged Void Emperor vessel. What they found inside revolutionized human understanding of their enemy. Admiral, Yu Jin reported from inside the alien ship, their technology is incredible, but their crew is strange. Supreme Commander Chan-Ho Park stood in the war room beneath Luna Station, staring at the holographic display that showed the full scope of Void Emperor space. After the victory at the Seven Suns, humanity had learned the enemy's true strength. The advance fleet they had defeated was less than 1% of the Void Emperor military. 2 million ships, reported Intelligence Director So Young-han. Scattered across 400 star systems, technologies we barely understand, population in the trillions. And they're all very, very angry, added Admiral Jun-Ho Park, still recovering from his battle with Emperor Thekmoran. Chan-Ho nodded, slowly. He was the youngest Supreme Commander in human history, promoted not for his diplomatic skills, but for his ability to see patterns others missed. What have we learned about their psychology? Dr. Yun Kyung Lim stepped forward. They're absolutely certain of their own superiority. The defeat at Seven Suns wasn't seen as a military loss. They believe it was a fluke, an impossible accident that couldn't happen again. Good, Chan-Ho replied. Confident enemies make predictable mistakes. The final assault on Void Emperor space began with the strangest military strategy in galactic history. Instead of attacking their strongest positions, humans targeted their most perfectly defended worlds. Instead of using conventional tactics, they did everything wrong on purpose. General Subin Park led the first wave with a fleet that appeared to be completely disorganized. Ships broke formation for no apparent reason. Communications were deliberately garbled. Attack runs were launched at seemingly random targets. To any rational military observer, the human fleet looked like it was falling apart. The Void Emperor defenders, programmed to respond to logical military threats, couldn't effectively counter attacks that made no sense. Their perfect defensive calculations were useless against opponents who ignored basic tactical principles. Their fortress moon at Keftar should be impregnable, General Subin reported from her command ship. Overlapping shield grids, redundant weapon systems, optimal firing positions. But watch what happens when we attack the weakest point with our strongest force. The assault was tactically insane. Sending heavy battleships against the fortress's least defended position was like using a sledgehammer to crack an egg. But the Void Emperor defensive systems, designed to counter efficient attacks, were completely unprepared for massive overkill. They're reconfiguring their entire defensive grid to counter our mistake, reported Colonel In-Ho Kim, which leaves their real strong points vulnerable to our secondary forces. Meanwhile, scientist Dae-Yun Park was working on a different kind of weapon. In her laboratory on Earth, she had discovered something that would change the war's entire dynamic. The Void Emperors have eliminated chaos from their society, she explained to the Supreme Commander. No crime, no conflict, no unpredictability. It's a perfect civilization. But perfect civilizations have perfect weaknesses, which is, they can't adapt to imperfection. Their entire social structure depends on everyone following established patterns. If we introduce genuine chaos into their society, she smiled, their own perfection becomes their enemy. Cultural architect Tae-Jun Kim was developing the most unusual weapons in human history. Ideas, not propaganda or disinformation, but genuinely chaotic concepts that could disrupt a perfectly ordered society. We're going to teach them about human music, he explained to his team. Jazz specifically. Improvisation, spontaneous creativity, deliberate deviation from established patterns. Sir, asked his assistant, how is music a weapon? Jazz is organized chaos. It follows rules but breaks them creatively. For a species that depends on perfect order, exposure to controlled randomness could be psychologically devastating. The broadcast began from captured Void Emperor communication networks. Human jazz musicians, playing improvised compositions, began transmitting across Void Emperor space. The music was mathematically complex enough to be recognized as art, but chaotic enough to be incomprehensible to beings who had eliminated unpredictability from their lives. The effect was immediate and profound. Void Emperor citizens exposed to genuine improvisation for the first time in millennia began experiencing what human psychologists recognized as culture shock. Some became fascinated by the possibilities of unplanned creativity. Others were terrified by the implications of purposeful disorder. Their social cohesion is breaking down, reported director So Young-han. We're seeing the first instances of individual rebellion in Void Emperor space in over 1,000 years. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Ambassador Wu Jin Kang, former victim of Andromedan insults, had been studying Void Emperor history and discovered their greatest secret. They weren't always perfect, he announced to the War Council. 3,000 years ago, the Void Emperors were as chaotic and unpredictable as any other species, but they deliberately eliminated those traits from their society through genetic and social engineering. So they used to be like us? Supreme Commander Chan Ho asked. Not like us. They used to be worse than us. The Void Emperors were the most violent, chaotic, unpredictable species in galactic history. They conquered half the galaxy through pure aggression before they decided that chaos was inefficient. Dr. Min-Soo Kwon realized the implications immediately. If they engineered chaos out of their biology, then chaos might be more than just psychologically disturbing to them. It could be physically harmful. The final assault on the Void Emperor homeworld was the strangest battle in galactic history. Instead of weapons, humans used music, art, and literature. Instead of destroying cities, they exposed populations to human culture. Emperor Thekmoran, commanding from his ancient capital of eternal order, watched his perfect civilization begin to unravel as his citizens discovered the joys of improvisation, spontaneous creativity, and deliberate mistakes. "Stop the human transmissions," he commanded his technicians. "We cannot, Eternal One. They are using our own communication networks against us, and they are transmitting on frequencies we never considered blocking." What are they transmitting? Art, Eternal One. Chaotic, unpredictable, beautiful art. The eye. Surrender came not through military defeat, but through cultural revolution. Void Emperor citizens, exposed to human concepts of controlled chaos, began demanding the right to make their own mistakes. The perfect order that had defined their civilization for millennia began to crack under the pressure of beings who suddenly wanted to be imperfect. Empress Yuri Choi, formerly Ambassador So Min Lee, accepted the Void Emperor surrender in a ceremony that redefined galactic politics. Instead of demanding tribute or territory, she offered something more valuable: the right to be flawed. "Your perfection was your prison," she told the assembled Void Emperor leadership. "We're not here to conquer you. We're here to free you from the tyranny of your own flawless civilization." The integration of Void Emperor technology into human civilization was overseen by cultural architect Tai-Jun Kim. But instead of simply copying alien science, humans did something unprecedented. They improved it by making it deliberately imperfect. Void Emperor technology is incredibly advanced, Tai-Jun explained, but it's also incredibly brittle. One flaw and the whole system fails. We're teaching their machines to be adaptive, to function even when things go wrong. The result was technology that was not only more advanced than anything previously seen, but also more reliable, more flexible, and more useful to species that weren't perfect. Admiral Hyunwoo Park, now commanding the original UES Harmony after Its conversion back to a diplomatic vessel reflected on how much had changed. The ship still carried diplomatic flags, but now those flags were backed by the knowledge that humanity could enforce their diplomacy if necessary. Ambassador So Young. "Han," he said to his diplomatic officer, "what's our next assignment?" "The Outer Rim Confederacy has requested mediation in a trade dispute. Apparently they've heard that human arbitration tends to be effective. Any chance they're planning to test our resolve?" "Unlikely, Captain. Word has spread about what happens to species that mistake our politeness for weakness." On Earth, Chancellor Min-Jae Park was addressing a gathering of young beings from across the galaxy. The audience included humans and aliens, all learning together in schools that taught both cooperation and the consequences of betraying that cooperation. "The galaxy has learned an important lesson," the Chancellor explained to the mixed audience. "Peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is the presence of justice, backed by the ability to enforce that justice when necessary." A young Vorthak student raised her hand. "Chancellor, why were humans polite for so long if you were always this powerful?" "Because we wanted to see if the galaxy could govern itself fairly," the Chancellor replied. "We hoped that intelligent species could coexist without someone having to be in charge." A Void Emperor child, one of the first generation born after their species' liberation from perfect order, asked the next question. "And when you found out we couldn't?" "Then we decided to be in charge ourselves," the Chancellor answered simply. "Not because we wanted to rule, but because someone had to, and we were the only species qualified for the job." The final scene took place 50 years later, in the restored Galactic.